Good afternoon in New York and North America's East Coast. Good morning in Arizona and California. Good evening in Europe and Africa, and welcome whatever time of day or night for all who are joining us from all corners of the world. I'm Yael Danieli, founder and executive director of the International Center for Multi-Generational Legacies of Trauma, ICMGLT for short. Thank you for joining us, for joining our webinar focusing on generations of environmental stewards claiming protections for their indigenous sacred lands. Today's International Center for Multi-Generational Legacies of Trauma webinar is held in observance of World Environment Day, June 5. Our panelists represent North American tribal initiatives to claim and reclaim and protect their indigenous lands and cultures threatened by harmful laws and practices. Their local and regional efforts focus both on implementing traditional sustainable environmental practices and on demanding systemic changes that respect their sovereignty. Ultimately, they aim at healing multi-generational wounds. As with our prior webinars on Indigenous peoples issues, today's webinar would not have happened without the dedicated help of ICMGLT's board member and co-chair of our working group on Indigenous peoples issues, Dr. Mary Fabry. Your moderator, I am a clinical psychologist, traumatologist, victimologist, and psychohistorian. All of these are extremely relevant, particularly to today's webinar. I have devoted much of my career to studying, treating, writing about, and preventing lifelong and multi-generational impacts of massive trauma, to ensuring victims' rights, to the rights of future generations, and to reparative justice. As a psychohistorian, I conceive of history not only as a set of dates and events, but as it is lived and as it shapes our identities and guides our choices and lives today. We are honored to have with us as our first presenter today, Chase Iron Eyes, director of the Lakota Peoples Law Project. Chase was raised on Standing Rock Indian Reservation. He earned his undergraduate degree from the University of South Dakota and his JD from University of Denver School of Law. Charged with a felony for inciting a riot at the historic, you have the right way of putting it, at no DAPL struggle, he called into question our global economic reality. Chase is an Itancan within the Wanagi Oyate, that is Ghost Nation, a spiritual discipline of the Lakota Nation. Our second presenter is Robin Jackson. She is executive director of the Dene Care, C-A-R-E. Robin is Toahani, which is near the Water Clan. She's from the Navajo Nation. Robin's experience includes research, community organizing, and organizational management in environmental justice issues related to environmental health, forest conservation, sustainable health system, and renewable technologies in the Southwest. She's also pursuing a master's degree in public administration from Northern Arizona University. Unfortunately, our third presenter, Cody Diabo, is not feeling well. He will record his presentation, so when we have the recording on the website, it will be there. So let me introduce him, even though he's not going to be with us today. So Cody Diabo, Rattenhayen's council chief, is Mohawk of Kanawake. Cody is committed to addressing environmental issues and raising voices of Indigenous communities impacted by environmental degradation. He believes Indigenous people should have jurisdiction over protecting their own land. Cody is responsible for governing the Karanawake Environment Protection Office, which played a pivotal role in the restoration project on Tekahawita Island, a decade-long initiative to restore water flow in the bay and naturalize its surroundings. We have an hour and a half for the webinar. Each of our panelists will speak for about 13, 14 minutes. Following an interchange among us, I will open the floor to questions or brief comments from the virtual audience. We will then conclude with last words. Please use the chat function, and we will do our best to respond to as many as we can. Feel free to direct your question to a particular panelist or to the full panel. I now have the great pleasure to offer the floor, the screen, to Chase Aaron Ives. Chase, I believe you're going to begin with an amazing video, but the floor is yours.
Thank you for that, Dr. Dinelli. Kola iuha ichichiab medak yapi iuha chante washte nape chayus papelo. I just want to greet you all as friends and offer you a handshake of the heart. And it's good to meet Robin Jackson. And it's unfortunate that Cody could not join us, but I've been at work for, to me it seems like a long time, but to some people 2 decades is not a long time. 17 years is not a long time. And I graduated from the law school that I went to in 2007, and I immediately began working for the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, which is where I grew up, on the Standing Rock Reservation. I grew up there my whole life. My mom moved us there shortly after I was born. And the reservation system is it's designed to cause the extinction of tribal sovereignty and indigenous nationhood. And the indigenous nations, such as mine, that is known as the Sioux Nation or the Oceti Sakowin, not only did we defeat the colonial project in our homelands multiple times, many times, but the United States asked us to enter into a treaty to ensure that U.S. American settlers could traverse our property and we wouldn't consider it trespass. So like when Dr. Dinelli is reading that I was charged with inciting a riot, I was also charged with criminal trespass because of the treaty rights that we have and because of the international character of who we are as Indigenous nations. We have a right. We have a right to self-determination. We have a right to all those rights, privileges, and immunities that are conceivable under international law, under the frameworks that are set up by the English-speaking universe, like the United Nations framework or the European American frameworks. We have a right to express ourselves outside of those frameworks as well. But it's a semester's long story about what Indian reservations are. I just wanted to begin by showing a video, since Cody is not presenting. This video is 12 minutes long, but it's going to tell you the story from my very brief perspective of the stand with Standing Rock. So I don't know if we can go ahead and just roll that video, and I'll pick up right after. But again, thank you for lending us your eyes, ears, minds, hearts, and your intentions. And please listen in on this video.
Indians, as they exist in the imagination of the European West, we're invisible. We were captured and sterilized and objectified and typecast into whoever we were in the late 1800s according to the Gregorian concept. So when a story is about Native Americans, we almost have to be the perfect victim in order for people to pay attention.
What are we doing? Our water's under attack! Stand up, fight back! What are we doing? Our people are under attack! Stand up, fight back!
We want liberation. We deserve liberation, and we will have liberation. But Standing Rock was part of the process. My name is Chase Iron Eyes, and I was there during the Dakota Access Pipeline protests. I belong to the Wanagi Oyate na Ocheti Shakonwi, also known as the Great Sioux Nation. I'm the lead attorney for the Lakota Peoples Law Project. So at the time that the pipeline fight was beginning, in the early days, there was a community meeting at what is known as Long Soldier District. So that was kind of my beginning as to being noticed that Energy Transfer Partners and their CEO, Kelsey Warren, intended to violate our treaty rights and our inherent rights and force us at gunpoint to accept the financial extractive dictate, especially when they had planned to put it north of Bismarck, North Dakota, which is, I think, something like 90% European American. 18 million people depend on the integrity of the Missouri River. We have a pipeline made at the cheapest cost possible because this is what capitalism does. This oil that is now flowing through our homelands illegally could destroy the entire river forever, or for how long, we don't know. I was there standing with Standing Rock on August 13th, 14th, and 15th. During those days, nobody knew what Energy Transfer Partners were going to do. As I remember, those who were willing to risk their liberties and their freedom and get arrested would go in an act of civil disobedience and chain themselves to the very gate where Energy Transfer Partners wanted to build a transport road. Several mounted horse women and men came onto the scene, and that's what the enemy saw. When they see us on our horses, and those horses are leading us into those situations, it backed up the entire police unit. And while that was happening, 4 women up on the hill decided to go forward of their own volition, and they crossed the fence line. Those women led us into unknown territory, territory that we had not known since 1889. I was there when 80 people rushed that fence line after these 4 women demonstrated that bravery. And these women went straight for the heavy equipment. They offered their bodies in a sacrifice to put themselves between financial extractive genocide and ecocide and the future of their families. As soon as Big Oil found out where our sacred sites were, they sent their team, guarded by a private security firm with deadly attack dogs, to go and destroy these sites. They had moved their heavy equipment more than 20 miles from where they were working on Highway 6, and they had leapfrogged all the way up to these sacred sites and began to destroy them. Hundreds of us were putting ourselves in harm's way. So when these attack dogs were being presented as a very credible threat to unarmed women and children, the warriors of that day took it upon themselves to drive this security team and Dapple's heavy equipment operators back to where they came from.
What the fuck you got to do?
Some things feel bad. Crunch feels good.
We did not contemplate the YouTube ads.
After the dog attacks, I mean, camp filled up. We're talking thousands, droves of people began to show up. The security team, they had identified an area that they could defend. It was a bridge whereby they held that bridge and kind of stopped our forward repelling of this threat. No! Those security forces began to mace unarmed people and inflict that pain and brutality.
This is not okay.
People were laying on the ground crying because they were being maced or pepper sprayed.
The police are protecting and serving the pipeline. They're protecting fossil fuel profits over human beings. They're macing people. They're fucking tasing them in the face.
Nobody who's been brutalized during that time was ever made whole. I was there when peaceful water protectors were attacked and brutalized on Backwater Bridge. Flashbangs. This is my first experience with this sort of weaponry. And it was like the 4th of July. There was all sorts of flares, all sorts of less lethal bullets. The things that they're using on protesters today, Black Lives Matter protesters, but it's more than just Black Lives Matter. Obviously, there is a revolution happening right now, but it began at Standing Rock. I was there and I saw blood running from people's eyes. I saw blood running from people's limbs where these security forces, these private mercenaries, were maiming people.
If anyone man enough, get the fuck over here. I'll be waiting here.
In 20-degree weather, the National Guard, they had a fire hose, and they were spraying all of the water protectors and coating them in water in freezing temperatures. It is an endangerment to human lives, and they knew this. I was there on December 4th to see 3,000 veterans, maybe 10,000, 13,000 people, just a long line of cars going into Oyate, because people had been given this great news, and victories were hard to come by at Oyate. But this day we had learned that President Obama and the Army Corps of Engineers were going to deny Big Oil's permit to drill under our river. So we wanted something to celebrate, but I was also very aware that 3 weeks prior, Donald J. Trump was elected president, and he had invested at least $100,000 in the Energy Transfer Partners pipeline. Kelsey Warren had also donated to Donald Trump for America, or whatever his campaign is called. So I knew that if it wasn't a complete ruse, that it was at least an empty-handed promise from the United States government once again.
You had pipelines that couldn't be built. I immediately approved them. Dakota? How about Dakota access? That was a very unfair situation.
Sure enough, when President Trump was sworn in January 20th, within 72 hours, he completely did a 180, and now Energy Transfer Partners and Kelsey Warren and Donald Trump were dictating the energy policy of the entire United States. I was there in the dark of February 1st, 2017, when again hundreds of military vehicles, law enforcement vehicles, National Guard vehicles began to mobilize north of Backwater Bridge. I was there when we all went to the bridge to find out what the private security apparatus was going to dictate. After about 5 minutes of discussion, Officer Stugelmeyer specifically asked for Chase Iron Eyes. And they let me know, Chase, we know you are responsible for this, and we want you to call all of them off of that hill. And I was there when I replied, you guys have been looking for one chief for 500 years, and there is no one chief who commands those Indians and their allies on Last Child's Hill.
Report, Command 299. Camping is better with searing and charring like a propane grill. Game days are better with outdoor.
Looks like they're starting a fire down there at the entrance to this west side.
We formed a circle and we protected our sacred fire, just like the Buffalo people. I was there in the freezing cold when those police forces and their Bearcats and their LRADs and their Humvees began to ascend Last Child's Hill and arrest us. Morton County, on behalf of the state of North Dakota, charged me with inciting a riot and criminal trespass, which presented to me a potential to return to prison for 6 straight years. August 23rd, 2018 is when my charges were finally dropped. This is Chase Iron Eyes. I'm standing outside the Morton County Correctional Facilities. It's time for the true patriots to stand up to tyranny, because it's here and it's coming. Since Standing Rock, I know that the American people are waking up to the nightmare that we experienced there at Standing Rock. All the mothers, all the fathers, all the U.S. military veterans who are now being shot with less lethal bullets, who are now being shot between their eyes with concussion grenades, who are now being snatched and grabbed by private police forces. But it's clear to me that we're drawing a line. And right now, Portland is part of the process. Minneapolis is part of the process. Los Angeles. Black Lives Matter is part of the process. The end of Euro-hetero patriarchy is part of the process. But I've been re-recognizing that land is sacred, life is sacred, the universe is sacred. I have available to me, and everybody has available to them, a more informed metaphysics, a more compassionate way of navigating our experience here on Earth. And we have those at Standing Rock to thank for that.
I think that's the end of it. Oh, here we go. So it's been four years since at the end of that, you saw the United States was ordered to follow their own laws. They've got to do an environmental impact statement, and Native people and tribal nations are two different things, two very different things. And the American colony is trying to erase the tribal sovereign aspect of the indigenous experience. That is what American citizenship is about. June 2nd, 1924, 100 years ago, we were subjected to the rights, privileges, and immunities of American citizenship. We didn't ask for that. We didn't beg for that. We didn't ask to be subjected to that because we're different. We are America's host. We are the host indigenous nations, the predecessor sovereigns. And so in my organization, I'll take the next 8 minutes to wrap up my part of my presentation. I'm working with spiritual leaders and elders and a youth group right now to facilitate the enhancement of our healing. When we talk about the center and generational trauma, there's a lot that confronts Native nations, not just indigenous nations, but when I mention Euro-heteropatriarchy, whoever's not within that Euro-male patriarchy is the target of that patriarchy, of that corporate extractive patriarchy. So if you're a female, then you've got a Supreme Court that in the United States that is now telling you you don't have sovereignty over your own body. They're not recognizing the women's province and prerogative to determine the destiny of her own body. So if you're part of the Afro-Indigenous community, the Black American community, if you're part of the Latino or Latinx or Chicano or whatever, pick a term, those people are our cousins. Like the people that they're capturing and putting in private detention facilities at the border between the United States and Mexico, some of those people are indigenous nations that have a right to traverse that boundary. So when we talk about trauma and telling the truth about what happened, and then organizing efforts to bring young people together with our elders, with our spiritual elders, who have been responsible for conducting ancient ceremonies in accordance with constellations, in accordance with the changing of seasons, and with other phenomenon that we're paying attention to. We can begin to heal because we're in a very critical state. Those of us who only know the English language, think of language like a software that operates your consciousness. It's like an operating system that operates your thought potentiality, and whatever you do to determine, interpret, and perceive reality has a lot to do with the language or the languages that one speaks. But in terms of our homelands and our connection to sacred sites, we've been severed from that connection to a large extent. The people that are in America who call themselves white Americans, they're European people who 3,000 to 5,000 years ago were living just like how indigenous peoples are living to this day. They had a sacred cosmology. They had a way to create unitive experience with the sacred elemental universe. But now they're just known as white Americans. Now they're just Americans or Canadians or New Zealanders or Australians. They were colonized and separated from, mind from soul or mind from spirit, human from a practical relationship with the earth, with the land, with the sacred sites, and with their food systems. That happened to those people a long time ago. Then they came to our territory in our land, landed on our shores, and did that very same process to us. But they didn't get all of us. There's a lot of us who are still, we went underground. When we were declared illegal human beings, when it was illegal to practice the sweat lodge or the sun dance or the naming ceremonies. It was criminalized to be who we are. So we're in a long way back from healing from that. When we talk about the representation of Indigenous peoples, Native nations, the agency of Indigenous nations, Native peoples, tribal nations, all these terms, we're just now reaching the point where instead of the institutions of the colonial West absorbing Native nations, we've actually incorporated the institutions of the colonial West, whether they're academic, educational, governmental, economic, social, whatever they are. We're incorporating the thrust of those colonial intrusions and trying to figure out how we use them to bring more of our people back into a sacred way of knowing, being, and living. And it's a huge endeavor, but it's the only way that we see forward. The only way to heal from colonial extraction and a human-caused climate catastrophe in a system that is putting the human species on path to extinction. The only way to heal from that and to fix that is to reinvigorate ourselves with Indigenous worldviews. And so I know that I want to thank you for paying attention to that video. It's one of the best ways that I can contextualize what we're up against and what you're up against. When I say colonial extraction and the expansion of corporate fascism, that's not just a native issue. That's for everybody who has a birthright to, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the right to peaceably assemble, the right to be able to drink clean water and breathe clean air and to eat clean, healthy foods that come from a clean, healthy ecosystem. We're all united in that struggle. So I will say that much for now, and thank you for indulging me.
Thank you, Chase, for totally in not just multi-dimensional, but totally inspiring presentation. Let me just underscore the right of future generations, which we believe in, which the center believes in very deeply. You mentioned ecocide, which is totally related. But the richness of your, I don't want to be insulting in trying to summarize the richness. So I'm not going to do that. But let's now invite Robin to present your contribution. Robin Jackson, who we know for a long time and adore. We know her, Adela, her mother, as well, and totally adore her. Robin, the floor, the screen, this little world of ours is all yours right now.
Thank you. Appreciate everything that was shared, Chase and Yael. She Robin Jackson Inishia, Twachana Nishla, Tatna Zatni Bashachin, Glass Che Dashache, Twachiglini Dashanella, although Twatasa Danasha, Danakar, Banashnish, Executive Director Nishla. I am near the Water Clan, the Tangle People Clan, and my maternal grandfather is from the Red Bottom Clan, my paternal grandfather from the Water Flows Together Clan. I grew up and currently reside in Wheatfields, Arizona. I work for the Navajo Environmental Justice Organization, known as CARE. So CARE stands for Citizens Against Ruining Our Environment. And it's an organization that started in 1988 our mission is to advocate for our traditional teachings by protecting and providing a voice for all life within and beyond the four sacred mountains. We promote regenerative and sustainable uses of natural resources consistent with the Dene philosophy of life. And our organization, as I said, started in 1988, and it started with a small group of community-based Navajo members, and they formed to prevent at that time the location of a medical waste incinerator in the community of Dilcan, Arizona. So after the group's successful defeat of this proposal, they received considerable national attention and were soon called upon by other Dene communities and Indigenous nations to assist in organizing similar efforts. So by 1993, with new members, other Dene people from across the reservation dealing with similar social environmental justice issues, they collectively formed and founded Dene Care, and the organization has since that time taken on a number of issues and has grown into a multi-issue and reservation-wide organization. And around that time in the 1980s, there were a number of communities of color, low-income communities who were dealing with a lot of toxic waste issues, and they noticed that the environmental issues they were facing was different. There was a lot of contamination, pollution issues, and eventually different reports came out showing that low-income communities, people of color, were dealing with a disproportionate impact compared to other parts of the population in the US. And so Dene Care kind of fits in with that environmental justice wave that was occurring. So Dene Care is a 501c3, and our focus is on the Navajo Nation, and our reservation covers Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, over 27,000 square miles. We are located in the Four Corners region of the Southwest, and a lot of the focus of Dene Care is on community empowerment. So there's a lot of land, water, climate issues that we focus on, as well as sacred site protection and public health. I'm just sharing also a picture here. This was from one of the early newsletters, so 1994, and this picture has some of those early founding members. So Navajo Nation lands, as I said, located in the Four Corners region of the Southwest of the United States. This is a picture of our reservation, and it's a pretty big area, and the geography, the topography is pretty diverse. We have high plateau region, canyon lands. It's a very mountainous area. And it's diverse. Actually, where I live on the reservation, a little more central, I'm along the Chusca Mountain region, which is a forested area, mountainous area. So the pictures here on the bottom is of Shiprock, which is actually a sacred site considered in New Mexico, but on Navajo Nation lands. And then also the top picture is looking out towards Utah. So pretty diverse landscape. And I guess a few things I wanted to mention about that, about landscape and how important that is for our people, is just that this land, this territory, there's a lot of story, there's a lot of history. Our people have about each feature of the land, all the mesas, all the mountains. It tells a long history of our people and how we came about to be here. And mountains are very central to our religion, our spirituality. We talk about specifically these 4 pillar sacred mountains that help define our borders, our territory. And the mountains are also considered our leaders. So The territory itself, the landscape, is very important to us. And we also are a tribe that reside in our ancestral territory. So that's also why this region is very important to us. Our lands are also where a number of minerals have been found. So during the Cold War era, there was a lot of uranium mining that occurred. A lot of uranium companies came and they hired Navajos to do that mining, not telling them. Of course, many people didn't know right away, but still, Navajos were the last to be informed about the effects of radiation. And today, even though that mining occurred decades ago, there are over 500 abandoned uranium mines on and near our reservation that still need to be reclaimed, still need to be cleaned up, and they're still having this adverse negative impact on our health and our lands. And throughout the Southwest and definitely across the reservation, the wind blows. And so there's that disbursement of radiation. And so there are high cases of cancer among our people and in the Southwest here. Also, this picture also just kind of shows some a coal ash pond. There had been around 7 coal-fired power plants on and near our reservation that had operated for decades. So that was a pollution source to the air, to the water, to the land. And 2 power plants had operated for decades on Navajo Nation lands. There was the Navajo Generating Station. It pulled coal, or the coal that fed that plant came from the Black Mesa region in Arizona. And that was also a sacred site to the people. It was Black Mesa is known as the female mountain, which is her counterpart is the male mountain, the Chusca Mountains, where I live. So that area had been impacted for a number of years. A lot of water was also extracted. Coal was slurried from the mines there to out to another power plant. So just overall, that plant had impacted the resources of our people for many decades. And then also there were 2 coal-fired power plants, the San Juan Generating Station in Northwest New Mexico, and then also the Four Corners Power Plant that was on tribal lands. And Navajo Generating Station in Arizona, that closed in 2019. San Juan Generating Station, just off reservation, but near, closed in 2022. And then the Four Corners Power Plant, that's still in operations and it's due to close in 2031. But even with the closure of NGS and San Juan Generating Station, there are still outstanding reclamation issues from the mines, and then also the coal ash waste, because those coal plants had generated millions of tons of coal ash, which was stored both on-site and off-site. And some of it's even been in unlined pits from the former mine excavation site. So there's just outstanding issues there around cleanup that still need to happen, and that can have a very detrimental effect. Also on our reservation, another extraction impact is from the thousands of oil and gas wells that have been largely located in the eastern region of Navajo Nation. And that's checkerboard region, so mixed jurisdiction of tribal trust land, but also state and allotment lands. Allotment also affected our people. And it is actually, so for over 100 years, our lands have been impacted by extraction. And actually the very first type of extraction that happened on our lands was from oil wells, oil rigs. And if you think about the cumulative impact that has happened from oil and gas, that has happened from coal mining, that has happened from uranium, that has had a huge cumulative effect to a number of places in our environment. So in the Southwest, what we're especially concerned with is just having good, available, quality water. We don't have the luxury of using water without it having a huge impact. So we really need to be paying attention to water usage. Part of what we advocate for, and a number of other organizations do too, is just we need to be more strategic. We need to be smarter about how we use our water. We don't have the luxury of it being used for things like fossil fuel usage. We need to make sure that that water is for our people, it's for our health, and it's going towards bettering and benefiting our communities. So yeah, over the years, there have been a number of impacts. I'm just showing a postcard that we've made back in the day from some of the work we've done around trying to get community input into a lot of processes, because our health has very much been impacted by all of the resource extraction that has taken place. And not only has it affected the people's health, our land, it also affects this land that we share with a lot of other living beings, wildlife, plant life, and in turn that then affects our culture, our religion, our spirituality, our ability to continue to pass on traditions to our future generations. I wanted to show a slide also of just to provide this brief timeline, just to show some significant milestones of proposals we've been able to prevent, to defeat, but also marking certain wins and successes. And there have been really a number of ways that the past founders, a lot of work that they've done to ensure that we were keeping at bay and curtailing a lot of really harmful resource extraction proposals. And I think that if the NACARE hadn't been around and hadn't organized with a lot of other community groups, our land would be so much more toxic and heavily polluted had we not gotten involved in preventing some of these proposals or ensuring that new management plans had been developed, and also just really preventing increased pollution. So I wanted to also show a slide of our focus of what we do. So NACARE started as a community organization group, and community organizing is really, really important. It's how you work with other people who have similar concerns, and you have to work as a group, you have to work as a team, and you also have to really do public education to inform people so that they know what's going on in their community, and they can also then participate in some of those proposals and decision making that's happening at different governmental levels. So it's really important to organize in your community. It's important to do that public education to make sure people are empowered with the knowledge they need. And the advocacy, being able to weigh in on when public comments are available to say no for this proposal, yes for this proposal, or maybe, but here are my concerns. So being able to inform that policy. And also over the years, as the NACARE has gone on, we've also been increasingly weighing in on you know, you go through all the rounds of, well, we've made our comment, we've weighed in, but now we need to come in and actually litigate on that issue. And it's really important to have that ability, to have that power. So I really appreciate the work Chase does as well. We work with a number of lawyers, and I think that that's a really important avenue too. And also we engage with decision makers, because there are a lot of official representatives who are creating that policy, who are making decisions on all of these energy and environmental policies, and that are affecting you, that are going to affect our community people. So Diné Care, we've been able to weigh in on a lot of energy and environmental policy at the different governmental levels. So tribal level with our own tribal government, and also those adjacent states next to our nation. So in Arizona, New Mexico, Utah. And then also federally, because we, for one, are a federally recognized tribe. So a lot of those federal regulations do impact us. And so that's also one avenue we weigh in. There's these different levels that we have to engage in. And as I was saying, in the Southwest, one of the ways in which climate change is especially affecting our nation is through drought. So we really have, and this is a picture of some past footage. There's some documentation and research that's happening in the Arizona universities, looking at some of the sand dunes that are increasing across Navajo Nation. And this would really have the harmful negative impact of just impacting vegetation, and our people still very much are a rural-based community. We still have a livestock. We rely on cows and sheep, and that is a form of a way in which we sustain ourselves. Our people still harvest these animals ourselves, and it really is a way of life. Some of our very traditional people and people who still continue with that kind of living get a lot of fulfillment and enjoyment off of being able to ranch and being able to take care of their sheep. And the sheep is also considered a sacred animal to us. And so this very impacts our livelihood and our ability to provide for ourselves and carry on different cultural teachings. Our people also, we developed rug weaving. I have this picture of a rug behind me from a local community member, but it impacts us in a number of ways. And so we want to make sure we take care of the land. And unfortunately, with climate change, there is less rainfall, less snowfall. And so that lack of precipitation very much affects us. At Diné Care, some of our environmental justice programs include, because we've recognized that our nation has been impacted by resource extraction over all these years, we think it's really important to promote a just and equitable transition, because a lot of the utility companies, which are non-native, which reside elsewhere, located elsewhere, they are transitioning out of some of their fossil fuel usage. So for instance, I mentioned NGS closing, I mentioned San Juan Generating Station closing. Those coal plants closed primarily because those utility owners that own those plants have found it more profitable to invest in renewable energy, and also other things like natural gas. But coal they didn't see as profitable, so they no longer profitable, so they close those plants. But that does cause a huge shift, and if it's sudden, it's a disruption to the local economy. So we need to make sure that as that transition occurs, that it's a just and equitable one that benefits the local people, that benefits the local population, and really that there should be that shift away from fossil fuels, because we don't want them to go into natural gas, for instance. That's still fossil fuels. And the other point I want to make on renewable energy is that we do promote renewable energy, but we also, as Indigenous people, we recognize that that can have a harmful impact when it's because it's mineral extraction. And if that's located at a sacred site, if that's located in a community where it's not wanted, if it displaces those people and likewise impacts their religion and spirituality, then that's not a just transition either. And so we think that we need to be cognizant of sites that are more appropriate for energy development, and also just to ensure that that local population is in support of that. So just one example, where the former San Juan Generating Station used to be, that coal plant, very close to it, there is now the San Juan Solar and Storage plant. And that's a photovoltaic solar farm. And it's in a mixed jurisdiction area. A local private landowner agreed to give his land for the development of that solar site. And, that, for example, we see as a good, the good development of renewable energy. It's not impacting a sacred site. It's where the San Juan Generating Station used to be, and the private owner is in support of that development. And also that renewable energy will replace some of the power that the San Juan Generating Station formerly provided. So citing where renewable energy is located, and then also it's really important to recycle previous photovoltaic solar panels and everything. It's important to also conserve, because whatever we do, we are using up some natural resources. We are using up that energy, and we do need to also have in mind that we're recycling and that we're conserving, that we have to have that reality of the impact that we have on everything. So at Dinacare, as we promote the retirement of coal and oil and gas, because those are fossil fuels, other things that we also don't want to forget, that as those facilities close, there are still issues there will be issues around cleanup. So with coal, there's a lot of coal ash waste that we need to make sure gets properly cleaned up. With oil and gas, we need to make sure we're not increasing the development of that, because methane especially is one of the greenhouse gases that comes from a lot of green oil and gas development. And so we really need to be cognizant that we're not continuing methane, and that it's not vented and flared. And also helium, in and of itself, that is a gas that's harmless, but the way in which they extract helium is through a natural gas process. So that's still fracking, that's still a ton of water usage and impact to the air. And that's actually a form of extraction that's been increasing across the reservation. So that's why that's a concern for us. And we really need to make sure that with things like helium, it is used in certain important medical research purposes, but also it's far too often used in like party balloons, and we need to be more realistic about the finite and limited natural resources that are available in the world, and the impact and the mining that occurs to bring those minerals about. So that's another thing I wanted to mention. And with Dinacare, I also was going to bring up that this organization is more than 30 years old. And we now in 2024 are making sure to forge ahead and continue the work of our founders and those community members who started the organization. This work is especially personal and meaningful to me. My parents were both among the founding members of the organization. So I was exposed to all the organizing efforts, meetings of my parents and the other founding members. And for myself, it's the work that I've chosen to go into for myself. To me, it personally feels like it is part of my parents' legacy, but also having grown up around, having learned from the other founding members, I am aware of the dedication and sacrifice that they all imparted in this work and in order for successes to happen in protecting our homelands. So for me, it's very important, this work, and it's not lost on me. And so I wanted to point out some of the generational leadership that this organization continues. And here's a picture of some of our board members, some of our staff members, and we are doing our part in carrying on the environmental justice work that has come before us. We love our homeland, we want to protect our homeland, and we also are very aware of all the previous work, all the previous sacrifice that our ancestors, all of that they had done, all the efforts that they had done to ensure that we could live in our ancestral territory, because our people, the history of our people and what we dealt with the US government and other colonizers, there was a lot of history in which our people were affected. So we don't want to forget all the advocacy, all the planning, all the coming together, all of the support and love that our ancestors did to protect us and to ensure that we could live in the same place that they had lived, and that we could continue as a people here. So we want to be able to protect our homeland, and all of the energy and environmental projects, they really do affect our ability to live here as a people. So we need to make sure that we are ensuring we have good, clean air, water, so that our future generation can also benefit and have a place to live and call home as well. I wanted to leave you also with this picture of my home. This is looking towards the south, and I live on a part of the reservation that is mountainous, that is forested. We have mixed conifer forest here, and we have snow. We're a part of Arizona, northern Arizona, that gets snow. This was a couple years ago when we got quite a bit of snow, 3 feet actually. So I like this picture too, to think about what I'm fighting for, because climate change is impacting also snowfall, and it's hard to get a lot of that depth of snow anymore. So snow is very important to our ecosystem, and that is also why I do the work I do. So please contact us. I provided our contact information, our email, our mailing box, our website, and our website will have all this information as well. And we are on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and X. So thank you, Ekaha, and look forward to the discussion.
Thank you so much, Robin, for this extremely rich, unsurprisingly, extremely rich presentation. And of course, our center will have all the contacts available now. There is one. Chase, are you with us? Wonderful.
Very much.
Because now it's time for I'm so inspired. I wonder whether the two of you would like to dialogue some with each other, because I can see how the activities could benefit each other. I'm wondering. Go ahead, please. You can just unmute, because this is time for us to dialogue.
Yeah, I'm definitely unmuted. Thank you for that, Robin, and also very good to meet you. I'm available for questions. I have about 10 more minutes in this room, and housekeeping is going to kick me out. So I want to make myself available for any questions, and certainly for follow-up. I don't know when I'll be down your way, Robin, but I'll certainly reach out. I go down to the other side, to the Albuquerque, Santa Fe kind of side of things. That's where as far as I got was Chaco Canyon, into Dene country, driving through there. There's actually a town or something called Standing Rock. It's some sort, I don't know what that is, but it's on the Navajo Nation.
It is.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a Navajo Standing Rock.
I'll be sure to reach out. Yeah, I drove by it. But anyway, just thank you. So I'm open for questions and so forth.
Wonderful. Go ahead. I wonder if you had any comments on anything particular in Robin's presentation, or the same, Robin, about Chase's.
Chase, I could say, yeah, I thank you for all your work as well. And I do want to say that just hearing from so many people that Standing Rock was very inspirational from a lot of people. I hear also about a number of young people who got involved after Standing Rock. And also there were different opportunities that came up to go at the time. I wasn't able to, but I felt like I did a lot of supporting work in order for other people to go. So actually, both my mother and sister went, and they offered their nursing background to help volunteer at one of the medic tents for a few weeks there. And that was actually when that Thanksgiving weekend or week when a lot of the water cannons and things were going on. So their services, I know, were really needed at that time. But yeah, that was a really significant time. And so I'm glad to learn more about all of your work in that.
One thing that first of all, there was tons of Dene people there. Navajo Nation was well represented. I mean, that was the largest gathering of different tribal nations, probably since Tecumseh's time. Maybe I'm not 100% sure, but anyhow, it was amazing. And when I listened to your presentation, uranium and the Navajo Nation, not only uranium but coal, we deal with the same problems. We haven't really fought coal in our territories because we've been far removed from the coal beds that are in our treaty territory, but they're not anywhere near our current reservations. But uranium, certainly, we've been subjected to uranium development, uranium mining. It's contaminated some of our waters. We're currently trying to organize a mining summit in August, somewhere around August 20th. I'll be in touch about that. It's going to be hosted in the Black Hills, but we expect multi-tribal participation, and not only with uranium, but with what they call, critical minerals that you can see. You can see the impact of the extractive lobby, because all the laws that are coming out right now are favoring the extraction of those minerals. Up at Thacker Pass, the country's largest lithium mine. I assisted some of the elders there in constructing their resistance, but it resulted in 3 Indigenous women and 1 Indigenous Two-Spirit who are Paiute Shoshone from the Fort McDermott Reservation and from the Reno Sparks Indian Colony being sued. And we don't know for how much money, but I'll conclude my assessment of your presentation, but in saying that it underscores the need for us to be truthful and adept at responding to the imposition of green capitalism or green colonialism, because that is exactly what's happening. Is we're saying we're getting away from fossil fuels, which nobody objects to getting away from fossil fuels, but it doesn't mean that I want to support 5 million new electric vehicles. I want to support solar. I want to support renewable technologies. I want to support, enhanced battery technologies. But we can't just continue on with business as usual. We have to be clever, and we have to. Standing Rock shouldn't have to happen. We shouldn't have to go to those lengths just to voice our concerns and to advocate for our positions. But almost 1,000 people were arrested at Standing Rock. And so I'll say that, like, there's more work to be done.
I would like to add here a very important development that the center can help. I created the Danieli inventory for multi-generational legacies of trauma, because at the time, and still now, there has not been a gold standard measure to assess multi-generational legacies of trauma. And Robin, particularly with the uranium exposure, we are conducting a worldwide study of all people who were exposed, for descendants of all people who were exposed to either nuclear bombing or anything nuclear exposure of any kind, including testing, etc. So, Chase, we are right on the same page here. We actually have the measure ready, including the language, both in English and in Japanese, in fact, even in Marshallese. Wow. And if you have the meeting on August 20, this is amazing stuff, because we can actually have a wider number of people involved. This is an amazing potential, because while you were both talking about different ways to fight and change, the one weapon you didn't mention is studies, actually data. And so let us humbly add that, because collecting data, it is absolutely invaluable in terms of affecting change, I believe, including political change, including communal change. So this is an amazing moment that we are all synchronized with the same issue in mind. And the same, Chase, you mentioned some people who were exposed not necessarily to environmental issue, but the results of violence, are still carrying the wounds and never healed. So this is very important for us to look at as a collective way of collective purpose, because we don't want wounds to keep open. When parents are wounded, the children and the future generations are affected too. It's not only the parents themselves. So while everything you said was so brilliant, I really sort of find difficult to find anything to add, but I think there is stuff for us absolutely to do together. And Mary has a question to the two of you, and a very important question. So first, Mary is thanking you both for your presentations on ongoing work in your organization. You have our total admiration indeed. And I would love for you to belong to the center and to the Indigenous Working Group, because it was written, you know, this panel was written.
There's I would just say there's always.
Let me just add Mary's question so I don't lose it, because you said you were going to leave soon. Mary asks, what kind of activities are your programs doing to engage youth, the future environmental protectors? And yes, indeed, Robin, you mentioned the issue of communication, that forever is a challenge. So can you think, because you know, and I mentioned before the rights of future generation, you mentioned, Chase, you mentioned ecocide, Robin, you mentioned environmental justice. We, the center, you know, we give awards twice a year, and one of the awards we gave was for our children's trust, which you may know is a legal activity in Montana. They actually children, little children, I met some of them, children themselves won the case against the state of Montana, claiming to secure their own future in their lands, which is, I find it so exciting, it's amazing. So let's connect all of that. Please comment. What do we do for the children? What do we do for the future? Not only to repair the past, which is totally essential. And Robin, you know, in your presentation, you showed so much wisdom also in terms of, yes, when we take on this, we have to be cognizant of whatever else would happen. So we have to always keep the big picture, whatever, to see the relationship. There's so much wisdom today. I'm totally excited. I'm ready to dance. So go ahead, I'm shutting up. Please speak.
Was there anything you wanted to say, Chase? Because you did say, I know you got to jump.
I will just, you know, just thank you for everything. My main goal right now, organizationally, is to link young people who are experiencing a lot of existential dread. Yes. I believe we all are, but I also believe that, think of yourself as a corporate extractive overlord, a billionaire. What you want is people being afraid of you and people being unaware that they possess power, spiritual power, and that spiritual liberation and the conceptualizing of spiritual dignity, human dignity, naturally is going to cause the pursuit of political parity, economic parity, environmental justice. And so what we're trying to do is link young people with elders, with spiritual elders, just within the Lakota Nation right now. And we're succeeding in doing that. We haven't reached the stage where we're going to be ready to start doing media. I really think communications are important. A lot of our people, at least where I'm from, they don't like to talk on camera. They don't like to, they don't see the importance of it. But the camera is just as powerful as a gun. It's just as powerful as the pen. And it's an adaptation that we have to make in terms of our own language revitalization, our own cosmologic and knowledge systems, structuring and enhancement. It's just a necessity. And so we're slowly getting there, but I will say that we have to empower our young people. We can't have them thinking, is it worth me finishing high school? Is it worth me going to college? Is it worth me trying to seek a career and build a life for myself when the world's going to end? which is what they hear all the time, is that the world is going to end. And the fact is, I mean, the human species is at risk, but the world isn't at risk. And really, we have the power, we have the authority and the drive to save humanity. But we get, you know, it's easy to get caught up. The logic and the systems of extractive capital are very brilliant. They're very fluid. They seep into everything. And it's hard to fight back. You know, it's hard to build yourself up and to fight back. But we have to do both of those things at the same time. And we have, there is the corporate extraction doesn't care what nationality you are, doesn't care what your phenotype is, doesn't care who you are. It's encroaching upon your rights, and it's leading us into a state of capture and consumer slavery. That is just only going to increase. If you're the overlords, that is what that's what's possible right now. It's what's happening in London. It's the surveillance state, the security state. They're looking for a full spectrum dominance. So it is important that we empower ourselves. And I just want to say thank you again for listening. Thank you for gathering. I look forward to connecting outside of here as well. Again, thank you.
Absolutely. The August 20 sounds like a very important date for us to be involved in together. And, you know, I get your email every single day. And I look forward to it every single day. And, you know, both of your organizations are listed as related links in our sector. Okay, Robin, Dina Care also. Okay, so that's important. But Robin, would you like to add your perspective in response to Mary's question about what kind of activities are your programs doing to engage youth, the future environmental protectors?
I would, just from what's been raised, there's, I think, a lot to say. It's,
yeah, that's a whole other webinar, indeed.
Well, yeah, and just thinking about research, like that is very important. It's been hard to engage on that because oftentimes because there have been a number of different companies that have impacted our lands, they often point the finger to one another, and there hadn't been baseline studies done previously. So that is a hard battle. But on the uranium issue, I would want to point you towards some other organizations who've really dedicated specific efforts on uranium. And so I would want to recommend them first to you, Yael, and also Chase. And then also with youth, I mean, Dinacare always welcomes volunteers, people who are willing to take that initiative, to get involved and help in any way possible. Often how we work with communities is because we're invited in that community to assist with those efforts, to facilitate those organizing efforts. And for, I guess the other part too, just kind of talking about the issues that we face, and especially thinking about things like climate change, that's huge. That's huge. And it can be very daunting, all of this work, when you're doing any type of social environmental justice work. It can be very demoralizing, but it's also really important to remember the good that's happening and the people who really care, who are there, who are involved. And we might not really know and see the way forward exactly, but all of our collective efforts are needed. And for Indigenous people, we have a lot of traditional ecological knowledge that we can still rely on for our communities, and that will help carry us through into the future as challenges happen. So even for Indigenous youth and everyone else, you know, your efforts are needed, and we need it for this collective effort. So please be involved, do your part. I think what I learned from a lot of Dinacare founding members is that we have to think about those who came before us, and it's a responsibility to step up and do whatever we can. Everybody has a special, unique gift, and we have our strengths and weaknesses. So, you know, what you do matters, and it's a beautiful earth. Mother Earth is very beautiful. Father Universe is also beautiful. So you are needed. Thank you.
Chase is running, so I will respect that. But I must acknowledge that it's so frustrating because we can keep talking about this forever. I remember as a young child being challenged to write little poems and things about my relationship to the earth and to the land and to the environment, and that could be a simple, lovely way of doing it. And we can talk about it, of course, another time. I want to alert you, August 8th, the day before International International Day for Indigenous Peoples, we will have an amazing panel, all Canada, all United States, data on Indigenous people. So be alert to that. And I don't have enough words to thank you all, except to say let's continue to work together. This is so critically important to all of us.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
you. Robin, also our love to Adela and the others. Okay. Take good care.
I will. Okay.